Good morning. I think we're still in morning, right? Just. I'm going to take a few minutes to talk to you with a few slides before I introduce my two colleagues on the panel. We're here this morning to talk about digital and how digital can help you grow your business. And the title of this conversation is, I don't believe in digital strategy. But I do believe that digital is critically important for delivering business strategy in 2017 and beyond. Everybody in this room will know some of the things I'm about to show you at rapid speed. Half the planet is on the internet on a daily basis. In the developed world, it's near 80%. In emerging markets, near 40%. But as it grows in emerging markets, this number will easily surpass 50% in the next year or so. There are 5 billion smartphones, not just in the hands of the people in this room, but in use every day on the planet. There are 8 billion mobile phones, which means there's more than there are people. And 6.5 billion searches a day on Google. That means since I started this talk, we're probably 700,000 searches in. And there's more than 1 billion people logging into Facebook every day. 5 billion people going through YouTube. Half of those are doing it on their phones. And when it comes to business, Alibaba, Amazon, there's more than 600 million people buying on those two sites alone. And about a quarter of all purchases that are being made today are being made on mobile. So I think it would be foolish to say things haven't changed, and if you want to grow your business, you can ignore digital. And that's really, I think, for 3 reasons. The first is reach. I've just demonstrated reach. The world is connected. The world can be reached using digital and increasingly mobile in a way that no other medium has ever been able to do before. Secondly, intimacy. I'm going to look around the room. I looked outside. About a third of the people in this room are on their phones at the moment. That's the level of intimacy you have. You can't put your phone down. So there's a relationship between digital and the channels and the media it provides that's different to anything else. And lastly, it's immediate. I'll talk in a little bit of time about the purchase cycle, purchase funnel, but essentially time is compressed. However, the first message I'd like to deliver is, despite all of that, the reason I don't believe in digital strategy is because I believe in business. And digital is a means to an end. So if you remember only one thing from this conversation, to do good digital strategy, don't be distracted by shiny objects. Digital, when well used, will grow your business. Badly used, it will be a drain on your business you can't imagine, as you chase after the new thing to do, like small boys playing football, running after the ball. So if you're going to use digital strategically to grow your business, I think there are 4 steps. And I'm going to take you through those 4 steps. The first step is understand. The second step is decide what to do with your understanding. The third step is to do it. And the fourth step is evaluate what you've done and improve it. Learn more, move through the funnel, refining what you do as new information comes in to improve your business decisions. So let's go through those steps. Understand. Understanding using digital is just different to how it was before. When I was training to be a marketing person, a businessman, that's pre-digital, you can tell by the greyness of my hair. But we never had access to the kinds of data and information we have today. Today, if you so choose, you could find out what those 50% of the people on the planet are doing in incredible detail. What they're looking for, what they care about, what they're searching for, what they're talking about, what people have strong opinions, which people are leading opinions, which people are creating trends, how their thoughts and the processes translate to the point of purchase, to the point of eating. You can follow people around the world and you can understand exactly what they want, what they need, what they're talking about in a way that was never there before. That is a level of business insight which I urge you to take advantage of. In the past, when I looked at competition, I used to run one or two of Unilever's bigger food brands worldwide. My competition, if I was selling a Knorr stock cube, was OXO. That's the single biggest competitive brand of stock cubes. And I could go out and find out about what their competitor is doing. At a push, I would then maybe go and see what my competitors were doing in their total food marketing. But now, the world of food and every single aspect that affects a brand is at your disposal if you choose to go and find it. So if you're building a business strategy, you can look as broad as you like, not just direct competitors. You can look at bloggers, you can look at retailers, you can look at direct sales people, you can look at anybody that's influencing the trends that you've identified by your external scan of your customers' behaviours. And this holds true as much as if you're running a B2B business as a B2C business. The point is, there is competitive information out there, which again, if you want to build a good business plan, you can use digital to build that business plan. And last, on the external world, you can benchmark yourself. So I've picked a brand at random here that I have nothing to do with, I know nothing about, except I went online and looked them up. This is Yakult. They sell little drinks, drinks that are supposed to be good for your gut bacteria. They seem to spend their money, I can find that out very easily, on four things: their website, their Facebook page, their Twitter feed, and their YouTube channel. Why they need a YouTube channel is beyond me, but the point being, if you want to understand what your competitors are doing in the digital landscape and see how good you are versus them, how many people look at your site, what they look at on your site versus their site, that data is available to you again. It's competitive intelligence and benchmarking that 5 years ago we didn't have, 10 years ago we certainly didn't have. Last but not least, on the understand space, you need to understand what you know. So that's all very well and good if you know what to do with it. This is anonymized data from a client of mine a few years ago. But take each one of those lines is a marketing team somewhere in the world. And in theory, they can score all the way to the top. That's the benchmark on the left-hand side. They could score 700 out of 700. As you can see, the best in the world are only somewhere around 500. If you want to implement digital in a constructive way that's going to grow your business, you need to have people that know what they're doing. Either train them or bring in experts. And I say this, it's obvious, but the number of people that dive into this space without really knowing what they're doing and spend a lot of money without getting business benefit is too high in my experience. I kind of would say that as a consultant, but I think the data supports the argument. So you've now built a picture of your customers, you've got a picture of what trends are happening, you've got a picture of your competitive situation, your own strengths and weaknesses. Now you're in a position to decide. And you need to focus on what's going to have the biggest impact in your business. There are more channels in digital than you can imagine. There are more ways to invest than you'll ever know. So, where should you focus in the funnel? How are you going to drive awareness and or offer solutions to questions that people are asking? And how are you going to close the sale? So everybody in this room will know the decision funnel, the purchase funnel, the sales funnel in some way, shape or form. This is an example of one. And we always used to speak about awareness. Once you've got somebody aware, they'll become familiar with your brand. Then they'll consider it as part of their portfolio of purchases. Then they'll buy you. And if you're very lucky, they'll become loyal. And there's much discussion in marketing, amongst marketing academics about whether this is still true, whether it's a funnel or whether it's a loop, and what the feedback loops are, and so on and so forth. But the critical thing is, at different places on the decision-making process, you have different chances to influence people in different places, in different ways, with different things. And that's why you need to understand how your consumers behave and what their journey is. So your different clients in different industries will behave in different ways. So this is a chart which I stole with thanks from McKinsey. It's in the public domain. And it just says, okay, here's 5 categories, taking 3 different places on the funnel, being made aware, searching for information, and repurchasing, and that being the reason why they buy. And just take any of them and you see they're not the same. So understanding your consumer's journey and when they are making decisions when to purchase is critical to know how to spend your money in digital. So don't invest it all in building awareness if you're in a skincare business, when more decisions are made based on how does the product perform, which isn't a digital question, but search is a digital question. People looking for information about products to help them decide which one to choose. So understand your consumer's journey. Even if you understand a consumer's journey and you're in a product category, and I mentioned before I worked in food for Unilever a lot, and I'm going to show you an example of some work I did in the food industry. Even with a portfolio of brands with a similar purchase journey, brands behave differently and have different roles. So here's a simple segmentation of a portfolio of brands. Expert brands, those are brands which people are looking for information primarily. Super brands, they're market leaders. Brands which need to be seen everywhere because they have a big presence and you can't afford not to be seen. Base brands probably don't even need a digital thing, they might be price fighters. And entertainment brands, hip brands, cool brands, brands which there's a buzz about, where awareness and brand image is critical in purchase. So you will know how your brands or your products fit in it, and this matrix will probably not be right for your business. But there will be a matrix like this that you can create which says, what's the business job that I'm trying to do with my brands, and therefore what kind of channels might be appropriate. And if you fill it in, you might end up with something like this. So this is an example I've created where a brand like Knorr is an expert brand. People look to it for information about what to cook, what kind of ingredients should they use, etc. And so it needs to have a web page. It needs that envelope represents a CRM program, so you're emailing and getting in touch, providing help. There's a YouTube channel, how to cook, and there's Facebook, because that's the place where you can drive people into your other domains. And not to dwell on it, other areas have different needs. So you've decided, and then you're going to implement. So this is 4 pages from Dove, a global brand, very high spending brand, in almost every market in the world. And this is just taken from the web. The home page is from 4 different countries around the world. This is a brand which has digital at the core of what it does, and it's using digital in a very structured way. And you can see that by looking at what they do. So everywhere it looks the same. The information that they're providing is the same, except where there are different products. So if you've got very good eyesight, you can see that some of them have got baby Dove in, because in some countries they have a range for mums and babies. But this is a brand which is spending money to create awareness, to drive people to its websites where it can talk about what the brand is for. So awareness is critical for this brand. Here's another page of brands which are more focused, also good brands, more focused on providing expert advice. So on the bottom there's something for Flora Proactive. Flora Proactive is a cholesterol-reducing product. Their digital strategy is about providing expert advice. Another type of expert is this at the top. This is on YouTube now. This is called All Things Hair, and it's about what do I do to make my hair look nice. It's driven by showing styling tips. So that's an appropriate use of a different digital medium in order to answer a different business question. And down the bottom here, this is Knorr. If you go back to what I said before, this website is about recipes. That's what it does. This week's meal plan, free recipes, recipe finder. It's single-minded. It's using digital to answer a real consumer need that they've identified through search. Different strategic problem. Just one last comment about websites and search before I forget. There's lots of money being spent on driving search, paid search. If you have a website of your own, you're probably spending money on paid search. Just remember that 90%, 95% of traffic going to websites doesn't come from paid search. It comes from answering real questions that people ask and doing it better than others. Search engine optimization. Very well constructed sites that are frequently updated to understand, to reflect what people are looking for. If you get SEO right, you will have, and then SEO right in terms of building the links, building the websites, you will be successful in search. And that's an investment that's not in paying for advertising, it's an investment in building, technology building. So last in the do section, closing the sale. If what you want from digital is to drive people to a place where they can buy your product, do it single-mindedly, do it well. And here's two examples, completely different industries. The top is for a UK-based home recipe kit delivery system. Everything they do is about selling. That's their homepage. These are posts on Facebook. It's all about selling. It's unambiguous and it works. They're the fastest growing provider in this space in the UK. And there's Nike, a completely different example. You'd think that Nike is all about brand, all about awareness. Well, there's a lot of money being spent on brand and awareness. But you go to their website and it's about selling. So that's me in 3 slides trying to say, you've got your understanding, you've made your decision, you've implemented it, then you need to learn from it. So 3 things: measure what you've done, learn from it, and then make the improvements and go back to the beginning of your cycle. If I have to say there are 2 places which are underinvested in, I think, in digital, it's not the building of sites, it's not spending money on advertising, it's doing the work up front, understanding the market and making decisions about what priorities, and at the end, making sure you keep your eye on what you're doing, learn from it and iterate fast, because things change very fast in digital. And that's it. My suggestion for you, if you're building a business strategy with digital as a part of it, those 4 simple phases. Thank you. Now, what I'd like to do is invite my friends, colleagues to the stage. We're going to have a short panel conversation about some of the things I've just discussed, and I will make sure we have time for questions if there are any questions. So could I invite David Prais and Daniel Singer to join me on the stage?
It'll be in the middle of the side.
Middle.
Middle of you.
Is this microphone working now? You go there.
What?
There. No, look, we sit there, and then people can recognise photographs. So, you've seen our introductions in the books. It would be, and you heard me introduce very kindly at the beginning. If I could just ask Daniel and then David to give a 2-minute introduction to yourselves.
Of course, sure. Is this working nicely? Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm the CEO at Mavens of London. So for those who don't know Mavens, and I'm not offended if you don't, Mavens is a consultancy that provides digital research to help brands build really effective strategies. So we work with global multinationals or market-specific brands who really want to understand their audiences. In fact, map out all that space Andy was talking about earlier to really get insight into what do people want, where do they go, what do they need, and then how do you engage with them, how do you talk to them, and then how do you set that in the context of your commercial goals? So how do you take all that wonderful knowledge and turn it into a plan that actually helps you achieve what it is you want to achieve, as well as helping your audience? And then we also then work very hard on that measurement side. So once you've got them there, how do you learn from that over time and make sure that you continually do it better and better?
So I'm David Prais, just a very quick history. I was head of global planning and strategy for Dell when it had 150 people and grew it to 5.7 billion. I then started another computer company in Europe that was based in America called Gateway, and ended up running America and then globally. And then did my own digital startup, which I sold out to AOL in 2000. But I'm interested that we're almost discussing this now because back in 1995, I started Gateway's online business. In its first year, we turned over $1.5 billion and dropped 300 million to the bottom line. And here I am 22 years later being asked to explain the value of a digital strategy. So to me it's a wee bit confusing that one would even get into this discussion. As I sit here today, I'm involved very much in investing in small digital startups, In helping London, I was mentioned earlier by the Deputy Mayor, with London's Fund of Funds, Funding London, where I'm Deputy Chair, and also now looking towards the new worlds of tokenisation and ICOs with a company there. But in terms of digital marketing, it certainly, to me, seems relatively obvious of the requirement. It's more a question of how you implement, which is really where Andy started.
So let me then start asking a few questions. If somebody could, I think that the clock is not helpful, but I don't know what that means. Somebody could give me a wave when we've got 10 minutes left, and then we'll make sure we have time for questions. Yeah, thank you. So David, since you're such a stalwart of this industry, if you could say what would be a couple of things that you think typify a good use of digital in a business?
So very interestingly, there is not a straightforward formula, which is part of, I think, what you were saying there. A lot of people in this room may be in the B2B business and feel they know all their clients. I have two very young daughters. One of them is 11 now, one 14. And I come home every day and I will find they're on two screens. None of those screens are the television. One is their phone and one is a laptop or a tablet. If you turn on the television, that's a third screen. And what we see is that everybody that's coming through, the generations now are getting more and more digital. Live television is nothing that they're interested in at all in reality. Magazines come digitally. And although there are ad blockers that will block out over 50% of all ads, and there's also something called ad blindness, that means another 47% won't be seen, we still, although very varied, you're seeing a number of areas. And even in the B2B area, you don't deal with a client, you deal with the people inside that organisation. And as they move through that organisation, we see the growth and the adoption of digital and the requirement for digital all over the place. Even as I look around here, I see various people on their phones videoing this. And this is something that wouldn't have existed 10 years ago. So to try and deny the impact of digital, I feel is unfair. But to sit there and say, do this and do that, to a large group of very intelligent individuals, I think would be somewhat blasé. Oh, bending down doesn't work.
Okay, I won't bend down anymore. Would you agree, Daniel, or do you have a different point of view?
No, I'd largely agree. I think it's very much a bespoke thing. The answer is there is no magic answer that gets you through it. But also it's partly about, the other thing is just demystifying the concept of digital. And the truth is these are all just paths to talk to people. That's what it comes down to. And they're all just ways of reaching out to people who have needs and interests and things they care about. And these are just different ways of doing that. And there are slightly different ways of doing it that can be successful in certain circumstances, and you can work those out. But it all comes back to what is it you want to say to them? What do they want to say to you? And if you can map through that and then align that back to what it is you're trying to achieve, that essentially is what it comes down to. Digital isn't something, I guess it has the potential to be kind of a magical word. And there are things that are different about this, but at the heart of it, it's just about how do you use the channels you've got to talk to the people that matter to you and listen to them.
So, thanks. Dave, if you were starting from scratch, if you were starting a new business today, what would be your approach to the kind of digital tools and channels that are out there? How would you begin thinking about them?
So I do start businesses almost every day.
I know.
Which is a wonderful thing. And currently, if we look at where the current trends are, community is everything. Building your community, building a group of fans. Now, there are a number of different methods of doing that, whether it be through social media, through advertising, drawing people in, but it is about getting real people saying positive things about you on an ongoing basis. So you as the company don't do the communication, but actually other people are doing that communication for you. And as we see that grow, we're seeing the power of that. It used to be that you go and talk to a neighbour about something and that was the most powerful mechanism of marketing. So I would buy something, I'd like it, I'd tell my neighbour, they'd go and buy it. Now we're seeing that happen in a much larger mechanism, and really the growth of community marketing, right, virtual community versus real, is really becoming very, very large.
I think that's one of the things that has changed, is that lots of these conversations happened before. People recommended things to their friends and their friends and their friends, and they always have done. That's always been the way it worked. What you can see now, though, is you see all those conversations taking place around you. When you did something, it would affect those you broadcast it to. TV is quite a good example. You would put up your advert, and when the advert wasn't on, there'd be some residual conversation you'd be totally unaware of, but it would be gone. Whereas now what's happening is everything you do leaves a footprint and a legacy online. Everything you've built, everything you've done, every conversation you've had, you can see the things around you that other people are having, but you can also see all the things you've done as well. So it's one of the changes this does do is you have to now be much more aware of that footprint you're leaving, and all of those things you've done actually will continue to matter. And managing that, actually, that vast real estate of everything, all those conversations you could be in and which you've had, is one of the interesting challenges in digital platforms.
So you say it's an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
Do the benefits outweigh the risks?
I think the benefits do outweigh the risks. I'm going to be biased, of course, because I'm a firm believer in things digital, but there's clearly a lot of risk in that you can very easily start off the wrong conversation. That's the great fear for most brands we work with, is they might say the wrong thing to the wrong person, it snowballs, and suddenly you end up with a campaign of something you've done. And there's always a judgment call of when do you get involved in the conversation, when are you comfortable. Equally, there is a great opportunity to engage in some wonderful ways of building that audience, that group of people who are your fans and supporters, through just day-to-day conversation. It isn't always thinking about those big set pieces and those big things you can get wrong. That's always a danger. You might build something that is dreadful and which hurts somebody. There's always those risks in communication and in products. But the benefits of just having that constant day-to-day ability to engage with the people who are interested in what you offer actually massively outweighs those occasional spikes of when things go wrong. They will happen. Plan for them and be ready. But that day-to-day is so much more powerful. To your point earlier, all that search that is happening happens regardless. You might as well be ready to be part of it. Yeah.
I didn't ask you a question when I asked you to prepare, but it occurs to me from the conversation that listening to what David had done 20 years ago, there will be a lot of people in this room who have got business-to-business opportunities where selling is one of the key opportunities that digital provides, selling to a larger audience. Do you have any recommendations about how to effectively build selling tools in the digital space?
Well, it's a very rude question to ask me. I own an agency that does that. I own a partnership unrivaled in Bristol. I'm not here to advertise them, interestingly. What we're seeing now is 21st century sales tools arriving for B2B. Where actually what people are looking at is not just the org chart that they're selling to, but actually the social interests of the people within that organisation. We actually look at the schools their children go to, what their bank accounts look like, how large their mortgages, who lives next to who talks to each other about decisions rather than just in the org chart. And we arm organisations with that sort of information so that when they have the face-to-face relationship, they know what football club they like or don't like, they know whether they like rowing or rugby, they know whether they go to the pub or they drink wine or they don't, they know if they're Jane, they know who their best friends are, they know everything about them, so they're armed to sell to them in a manner that makes it very, very effective and shortens the line. And really, stuff like that we're seeing being used by some of the largest companies around today, SAP, Inmarsat, people you wouldn't really thought that technology was critical to them in terms of how that they sell, but they're using these sorts of technologies.
So that's very much at the digital intelligence end.
Absolutely.
And in terms of the digital delivery, so I referenced some examples of Nike, for example, or Gusto. Again, just examples which anybody here can find in the public domain. Do you see examples of what works well?
Nicely put. You're trying now to get me into the bits of the business we don't discuss publicly, obviously.
No, not at all.
But absolutely, there are personalised messaging, which is really where we're going to in terms of the community, which is that actually you start to drop in personalised messaging, whether digitally or physically through human beings, to these people that are not necessarily conscious but subconscious, so that they warm to you in various manners. But yes, that can be through whether it be email, whether it be through commenting on their Facebook page, or whether it be through other mechanisms of addressing them, there are nowadays very easy ways of trying to address individuals within large corporates in manners that they might not have seen in the past, and they may not even be conscious of it.
Anything on sales and e-commerce that you think would be interesting to this audience?
So David covered it really well. Yeah. I'm just going to take it from a slightly different angle, which is there's one way to approach it, David's absolutely right, is to understand the people you want to talk to. The other way to approach sales is to think about the need you're trying to address. Because the other thing that happens with a lot of this digital data is suddenly you have a way to talk to the problem someone has. And this is to go out to talk to people you don't know yet. So when you know who you want to talk to, you're first finding them. Obviously having that wonderfully rich information is great. If you just know, so for example, we work with a brand who wanted to do cleaning advice. And they wanted to sell cleaning products. That's the ultimate end goal. In some ways you could know lots and lots about that audience, but what you really need to know is that when they are writing in how to get mold out of their curtains, or how to get a wine stain out of the carpet, those really glamorous subjects, you can be there to help them and showcase yourself at that moment. So with the audience you don't know, which is a nice compliment I think, you can go to trying to work out what are the needs people have, and then creating properties that let you build that. And that's a great way to speak to those.
Okay. I think we now need to move to questions, am I right? Okay, so there's a microphone somewhere in the background, I think. I wonder if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask me or David or Daniel, anything we've discussed or anything else. So, where's the mic?
Oh, it's at the back.
Yeah.
Next. Next one.
Okay, I'm here. My name is Manish and I'm based in UK. A very interesting conversation. It's giving a new insight of how business can be done in new generation. Traditionally, we are here a family business, most of us, and we have a lot of relationship built up with a family in a business. So the question I'm asking to Andy is, or anybody else can take this question, how the new modern tools like CRM packages or maybe ERP packages, what are the role of these kind of thing in the business right now? And second question is, what is the currently adaptation level of these kind of model tools in small business or medium businesses?
Who'd like to pick that? I'll give you a short answer. I think that if you're running a business today and you're not using CRM, a small business, I think you'll find life to be difficult. Because essentially, CRM is about building your intelligence and making sure that you are identifying your prospects and then in a structured way managing those prospects and continue to feed them the information that you've got that's relevant to them. I think if you link CRM with some, there are expensive and there are cheaper ways of doing search and market intelligence. If you link market intelligence data with CRM, you will give yourself an advantage in the marketplace.
I just got a really simple answer, which is what's the difference between a small family business and a large family business? And it's called success.
And cash.
And cash. So, well, cash comes from success. So don't think of yourself as a small family business. Think of yourself as a business that's going to be a large family business, and then you may get there, and think about what are the steps that move you from small to large, and why one would want to or not want to do that. I'm not suggesting there are some incredibly profitable, very happy small family businesses. My grandfather had one, and they stay that way, and they're very, very good businesses. But the question you have to ask yourself is, how does one move from small to large? And a lot of that has to do with the technology that you put in behind it to enable the growth once that business comes, as long as you have the right offering for the marketplace.
Just to add to that, a lot of these tools, they exist at all kinds of scale. So there are lots and lots of small tools out there that work brilliantly well for small and medium businesses. An example of the work we do, we work with global multinationals across multiple markets. We recently just did a small piece on a charity basis for a charity of about 7 people. And the fact is many of the underlying tools you might use actually are kind of similar. You might not be doing it for as many markets and your focus might not be as big, but you can still do a lot of the same techniques. It's about the mindset and the approach as much as anything else.
Okay. Thank you very much. Over here for the next question.
This hall has more people with $2 million to $20 million range of businesses. So marketing become intimidating sometime for all the business houses but the opportunity is there. Business must be running Bhilwara in small town in India or in Hospet or in Nasik, how those businesses can be connected to a global need and global demand of the marketplace. And you really rightly mentioned, David, that it requires the mindset, it's a commitment, it's a conviction that marketing is a tool to become a great equalizer on a global trade. So since morning we are listening to that some business will get disrupted, some business will get dismantled, but some new opportunity will get created. That something get dismantled, it's a great opportunity for new businesses to take shape. And that's where what is the advice that how do we change that mindset from a small family business to a large global business? Is it?
Oh, this is the biggest challenge, isn't it? Changing the mindset. And I can't really argue. I think a lot of it has to do with sitting down and talking to people, either with experience that have done it. I mean, I started my own business in '97 with $200,000, and I sold it to AOL. I always
more than $200,000.
Slightly more, yes, just slightly. In many scales of the world that I've dealt with, it really is a risk-reward scenario one looks at, and when you look at that, I don't ever expect people to risk everything on a marketing campaign. What it's about is starting small and seeing the results and testing and seeing how it will work for you. Yeah. But it is putting money aside to risk, and that really is the start, is saying I will risk something to try to get that growth.
So my builds on David's comment would be few. One would be that I think good brands nearly always start with something. It's quite difficult to invent a brand from nowhere. I think in more than 30 years of working, I've had the opportunity to do it once. Normally it's built on an original innovator or an original family, or somebody's had an insight and it's been small and it's gradually been developed and developed and developed. But if you go to almost every great business in the world, there will have been a point when somebody got it right, and then the job, I think, of businessmen and women is to then shepherd that idea and help it stay throughout. And that can be a small brand or a middle-sized brand or a big brand. Good brands have something that's core and it stays the same forever. I think the other thing is that because there are so many places now to get insight, and because digital allows you to test and learn really relatively quickly, the cycles have changed. It used to take, you know, if you were going to be advertising a brand and you wanted to do it on radio or in the newspaper or on television, it took months and months and months to get the thing agreed and made and out there, and it took more and more months to then find ways to measure whether it was working. And often you couldn't tell whether it was working. Today, that cycle is compressed. You can go from an idea to something which is pretty good and get it out in front of people within days. If you really want to, you can do it in hours. And you can measure what's going on equally fast, which means you can learn and iterate much quicker. And I think, build on top of risk, I recommend that people learn and iterate. But my third point is, do it in a way where you use the intelligence which is out there. There is so much information out there today. I think people should still take risks and gamble and use their guts and their instincts. But there are mistakes that one could have made in the past because you couldn't find out are there less and less, because most things can be found by most people with a little bit of effort, and you don't have to be going quite to the level of the company David mentioned, which is kind of on the brink of, you know, very sophisticated ways to find out stuff. You can get a lot at relatively little effort these days. Do we have time for any more questions? One last question.
Can you please highlight upon any new or upcoming tools for marketing intelligence for both small and big enterprises? I mean, you have, for example, programs or artificial intelligence which can go through a lot of data and generate you output. Has it already proliferated the market, or is it in infancy? Okay.
Do you want to start with an answer on that?
I'm going to go and, yes, I'll start a slightly different direction, which is that there are lots, and there's an endless number of really, really good tools out there. The one thing I would stress in all of them is that, firstly, it's possible to get really excited about all the tools. There's so many good tools. the trick is always, does the tool give you the data to the problem you're actually trying to solve? Because there's actually the problem we often run into is there's no shortage of data out there, and there's no shortage of tools to get you that data. It's whether that data actually lets you help answer the question you've got. So the first thing is, I would say, a guideline for your tools, and does it actually help address the problem? And the other one we find is we build a number of tools in what we do. We also find that there is, again, some very clever machine learning kit out there, but it never hurts to have a human being eyeballing the results as well. We aren't yet at a point where we're quite ready to take out that gut and that intuition from this process, and that even the best tools we've seen will still suffer fairly high, in some cases, or at least awkward error rates. Things like humour and sarcasm, particularly around language, can get lost so quickly. So it never hurts to also just work out, what is just that quick sense check you build into your tool to say, do those results make sense? If they're challenging me, is it a challenge which I'm okay with, and I need to change the way I think, or it's because there's something wrong with the way I set up my parameters in the first place?
Dave, anything to add?
Oh, I think the key thing, absolutely, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tools out there, and many of them are very, very good at what they do. The challenge is finding the one that solves your problem, as we state, and I think if you just left it at that it is actually worth taking the time to do the research, not buying the one that's marketing to you the best, but the one that actually solves the problem you're after, and utilize that. The simplest, cheapest tool that solves your problem is the best tool.
Yeah. And if it isn't good enough, go to the next one afterwards, but start, I think the whole thing I'd like to say, going back to the theme that I raised and the guys have helped with here is this is all about business, right? So in the end, it's about not being distracted by everything which is out there and possible, because there are lots of things that are possible, but it's about asking how can tools or channels or media help you deliver more than you could have done without. But in the end, good business is about making decisions about strategy and implementing them. Okay, I think we're at the end of our time. Thank you very much for listening to us. I hope it's been useful. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, David, for joining us.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you very much for a brilliant conversation on marketing, branding, selling. All the things are coming together. I think you have put the right questions to this audience and create a trigger point. What in the beginning, which I was mentioning, belief as a system, belief capital, B for brand capital, E for end customer, L for leadership capital, I for your product differentiation capital, E for execution capital, and F for finance capital. So we are, a lot of people over here have a very strong understanding of finance capital. I think the first starting point is B, which is a brand capital. How do you build a brand? And today there is a great opportunity from any brand to come from Kenya or Uganda or 23 countries where all the people have come from. How can they become a global brand? Europe has given most of the brands in the world. I think Europe has last history of giving the brands which we are consuming, which we are using in India, in the developing country. How do we learn from the soil of the brand, which is London? How do you learn from it to create this brand? The three gurus of brand gurus, which they have given the input. One or two messages which I picked up for myself is that you need to separate out the money for marketing and branding. You will not see the output immediately. It's not a tangible output. It needs to be there for sustained basis for next 3 to 5 years. Though the cycles of getting the feedback of that money can be coming from some marketing tools, getting the feedback from it, but still you need a separate risk capital to be put into the marketing and branding so that it becomes a global brand. Second thing is, it's a science by itself. The way you have a finance as a science, product as a science, marketing and branding today become a digital science to understand how we can leverage this science, and we need to learn the science in each of the organizations where we want to have aspiration to become a 10x. This will become a very important piece for setting up a department, setting an expert department, setting up the expert minds in your organization, where we need to commit some money, commit some dollars for that investment, and we can have a help of the consulting companies, whether in India, whether in Kenya, whether in Uganda, whether in Japan, or whichever country you are operating from, to take help of the expert knowledge from the consulting companies. So the way we are taking strategy consulting, marketing and branding, and digital sciences is the next investments. This is my take on your session. thank you very much for bringing this to such an awareness to everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Arun uncle, for the input.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure we all have had a good session, points and strategy to implement in our own business to make them global. I thank the speaker for the enlightening session. I request Mrs. Arun Jain to come on the stage and hand over the memento to Mr. Andy Porteous. Mrs. Arun Jain, please.
Getting a gift.
And a theme song, apparently.
Apparently not.
Mrs. Arun Jain, please.
She was on the phone.
I think you might get one too.
There are 3.
Oh, okay.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
I request Mr. Rupa to please come on the stage.
After you, mate.
I request Mrs. Rupa to please come on the stage and hand over the memento to Mr. Daniel Singer.
There we are.
Very kind.
All right.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
We're going to have
Thank you very much.
applause and David.
That's very kind, thank you.
I request Mrs. Sindhu Jain to please come on stage to hand over the memento to Mr. David Prais.
Did you shake hands?
I did. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Much appreciated.
Please join us for the lunch, and the next session starts at sharp 1 o'clock. Thank you.